understand that you're running your own race, right? I remember as I was growing up, I always compared myself to others. Right? This is the worst thing you can do because you feel you feel inept. All right, so navigating finance, a minimum viable lifestyle, and cash flow management. Thank you very much for inviting me along. As per usual, this is a general information only webinar. It is not personal advice, so please don't take it that way. We'll make sure to try and add as much value to your circumstance. So make sure if you've got any questions, fire them at me at the Q&A section so that I can see them all and answer them all one by one. My idea here is to add as much value as possible during our hour. We may go a little bit over time, but I'll try and stick to that hour as best as I can. So here's a webinar overview for all of us here. So a little bit about myself, how my story fits into what I'm going to be presenting today, a bit about what to expect, a minimum viable lifestyle, cash flow management strategy rather than budgeting, investing for FIRE. So we'll be talking about FIRE. I don't know if any of you have heard of the FIRE movement at all. Any hands up there if you've heard of this particular movement? FIRE movement? No? Okay, cool. That's really exciting. So you get to learn about that. That's really cool. And wrap it up and then finish off with Q&A. So a little bit about myself. For the folks who were here last week, I basically, to cut the long story short, I went from science to finance, purely because I was under the impression that to become financially free, I needed to earn as big a salary as possible. And at that time, my only reference in my life was my auntie, who was earning a good salary as a doctor. So I thought medicine is the way to go. So I was trying to get into med the whole time. And as I started to work as a scientist and finished my honors, I started to invest and fell in love with the idea of becoming financially free without having to work too much. Right. So that's when I moved across from science into finance, and my goal now is to educate as many people as possible within the next 10 years or so. So hence why I'm here. So a little bit about myself and the minimum viable lifestyle and cash flow management system. As I was growing up, I never really had anyone to teach me about investing. So what I'd like to do for you guys today is to plant a seed of investment in your brains, because as I was growing up, I didn't know anything but to spend money. Who here can relate? Hands up if you can relate to that. If all you know is to save to spend. Yeah, so it's fairly common, right? Most people are of the same kind of mentality, because they weren't aware of what other options there are. I remember the very first thing that I bought when I was a youngster was a $300 1-week camp or something along those lines, basketball camp in the Gold Coast down in the Tallebudgera Creek. There's an exhibition/sports center there where I stayed for a week with a bunch of basketballers. I was 12 or 13 at the time. I saved up $300 from my $5 paper run at the time. Managed to get a $5 paper run and a $15 paper run, and I saved that $300 only to spend it. So what I want to show you today is a different way of thinking to show you what options you can put forward to yourself, your future self, just by being consistent and just by understanding where you're heading towards. Right? So that's what we'll be talking about today. So what to expect? We will be talking about the 80-20 rule. Right? As some of you are well aware, it is one of the key components of getting things done in life. You need to work out what the 80-20 rule is. What are the low-hanging fruits that you can tap into straight away to get the big results for yourself? Right? We're going to be talking about the minimum viable lifestyle, how to go about calculating that, set ourselves a challenge, hopefully. That'd be great. Talk about cash flow management, the difference between cash flow management and budgeting. Very important. Talk about FIRE, right? What is FIRE? We'll be going over that a little bit later, and the breakdown of future webinars. So hopefully some of you will be able to make next week's webinar. It's going to be jam-packed full of stuff. We'll be going over that later. So the low-hanging fruit, as per last week, right? The 80-20 rule is all about understanding what is the 20% of actions that you need to take to get 80% of the results. Because what you want to do is you want to tap into the steepness of this curve right here. If the y-axis is the total output and the total input is the x-axis, what you want to do is maximize the output by putting as little input as possible, right? Because once you hit the point of diminishing return, what typically happens is your results start to kind of taper off a little bit. So you need to find that out. So today I'm going to be sharing with you what helped me get out of the rut I was in, right? To allow me to go ahead and get married, have a holiday every single year, build an investment portfolio that's doing pretty well, and create the businesses and the life that I want, right? I'm not quite to the ideal lifestyle, but I'm certainly getting closer as the years progress. So that's the key thing. So you need to take away what are the 20% bits of action that you can take, that you can make for yourself and implement to ensure that you can achieve the 80% of results, right? So the law of diminishing returns. As I mentioned before, very, very important to know when the steepness kind of tapers off a little bit, because you'll be wasting your time if you spend more energy in that. Very, very important. So understanding what you want in life is also very, very important. So at this particular stage in time, who here are students? Hands up for all the students in the room. Yeah, majority of us. Fantastic. Good stuff. So for you guys, there's obviously a ton of pressure coming at you. Everyone asking you, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? Well, in the end of the day, it's not necessarily a career choice. I want to ask you today, what do you want to do with your time, right? Because with a career choice, you can chop and change as time progresses. You know, the average number of people, the average number of career changes nowadays has increased to like 7 or 8 relative to where it was 1 and 2 about 50 years ago. So what you need to understand is you need to know your motivators. You need to understand what drives you and what motivates you moving forward, right? Because a career may not make the right career may not be the first career you come out of university, right? So you need to make sure that you understand yourself and be a little bit more self-aware. Create a list and a plan, right? Very important, because what we're trying to do is reverse engineer your ideal lifestyle, right? Ultimately, you want to create a bit of a North Star for your decision making, right? So what you want to do is consider 3 key aspects of your life: time, health, and wealth, right? If you can make decisions based on the middle area here, this becomes your North Star. So the key here is to understand and set yourself short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals associated with time, with your health, and your wealth to ensure that you're in an even keel. Far too many people focus and are hell-bent on wealth. Far too many people are focused and are hell-bent on health. And some people have way too much time on their hands, right? So what we want to do is get that balancing act. Very, very important, because if you can hit all cylinders, if you can fire on all cylinders throughout your life, you find that kind of elusive balance that everyone talks about, right? So just understand that it's very, very important to write down what your short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals are, right? So for the students in the room, what you may be looking at for your short-term wealth goal is increase the likelihood of finding that job, so that straight up after university, you can find that job to provide you with an income automatically. Very, very, very important. And suddenly you're in a space where you've got a hell of a lot more options, and you'll be using the tips that we'll be going over today to actually put you in the best financial position moving forward, right? Like understanding what the minimum viable lifestyle is, right? You have to start with the end in mind at every single juncture when you're goal setting. Very important, because if you don't, you tend to meander along. And the status quo is a very alluring concept, right? Every single one of your friends and your family will tell you to do what they think is good. And it all comes from a good place, but you need to understand what's best for you, right? And if you start with the end in mind, and don't be afraid to write these things down and to share it with others if you're courageous enough, and actually go for it. It increases the likelihood of achieving these things a hell of a lot faster. And the 4th point here is understand that you're running your own race, right? I remember as I was growing up, I always compared myself to others. Right? This is the worst thing you can do because you feel you feel inept, you know. I certainly did. And I was sort of down and out for a few years there, wondering how the hell do I get out of this rut. And luckily, I came across a few books and sort of opened my mind to the wonderful world of personal development and investing in that kind of stuff. And I realized, well, it's not really about what John and Jerry are currently doing. It's about what I want in my life, right? So if I can leave this idea in your mind's eye today, I think I've won, right? So create a list and plan. Very, very important. You've got to start planning. Because what did Warren say? Does anyone know Warren Buffett? Have you guys heard of Warren Buffett? Hands up, please, if you've heard of him. Cool. Brilliant, brilliant. So Warren Buffett is probably the most successful share investor alive today. So he's doing really well. And he says, an idiot with a plan can beat a genius without a plan. So the key is to start planning. It's really as simple as that. Now, it doesn't matter if you don't hit your goals straight away. So long as you're planning and you're making every day better, you're gonna achieve something worthwhile. Right? For people who aren't planning ahead, for people who are sort of meandering along, wondering where life is gonna take them, it's a hell of a lot harder for those people to achieve their goals, right? They probably don't even set goals. Right? So by setting goals, you're putting yourself in a position to actually increase the likelihood of winning. Very, very important. Right? So what if I told you that as soon as you start working, you can actually replace your income within 11 years? And if you're hyper aggressive about your strategy, within 6 years. This is what FIRE is all about. This is about becoming a better investor. This is about understanding the power of compounding interest and the power of consistency and building habits in your life. Today, we're going to be showing you what a minimum viable lifestyle is, which is essentially allowing you to create a baseline for yourself to ensure that you're putting yourself in the best financial position as possible, right? Any questions, please feel free to fire them at me on the Q&A section, yeah? So what is the minimum viable lifestyle? Now, how do you calculate it? I drew this up a little bit earlier. So the first thing you need to do is understand that the total expenses here is made out of two things: discretionary expenses and essential expenses, right? So what are essential expenses? Rent, mortgage, food, communication, and transport, right? There's probably a few more that I've missed there, but those are the big ones, right? Discretionary expenses, on the other hand, that you can cut down if you like, right? Leisure, entertainment, excess costs. So you got to ask yourself, with the balancing act, there is always a question of what do you want to work towards? Your financial well-being or your lifestyle, right? So everyone is different. Back to running your own race, right? Because everyone values lifestyle differently relative to finance, right? So the question is, how fast do you want to get to financial freedom? If it's really ridiculously fast, guess what? You're going to have to tilt that financial side of things your way a little bit more. Very important, right? So you get your total expenses, and now to calculate your minimum viable lifestyle, you essentially get your total expenses minus as much discretionary expenses as possible to get you to your minimum viable lifestyle. So ultimately, what the minimum viable lifestyle is, not MVP, MVL, right, is your essential expenses, right? That's the key. Minimum viable lifestyle. Cool. So what are your essential expenses? Write them all down, right? So if you guys, any of you guys are currently struggling with COVID-19 and hours going down and not having an income, hands up if you are. Cool. Yep. So it's a hard slog at the moment. So what you really need to do is ensure that you're lowering your minimum viable lifestyle, your expenses as much as you can, to ensure that you don't put too much pressure on your back pocket, right? So what you want to do is build up as big a buffer as possible, right? So that you can use that buffer to sort of maintain your current lifestyle, right? That's the key to this thing. right? This is your opportunity to lock something in, lock this experience in, and actually remember this and make it ingrained in your brain, because this is one of the tools that I'm currently using for my finances to lower my minimum viable lifestyle, because I know in the past I've successfully managed to eat mee goreng noodles for a whole week, right? I've successfully done that. Therefore, I can go back and do it again if I'm looking to save a bunch of cash really, really quickly, right? So I want you guys to see this as an opportunity. It's really, really difficult. I totally get that. You know, I've been there. I've been a student before, but I've never gone through something like this where everything's pretty much closed down. So what you need to do is see the silver lining in this thing and understand that you can look back on this and use this as a tool to help you move forward, right? Cool, so your MVL challenge, well, what you want to do is consider how can you make this a challenge for yourself, right? So how low can you go? What is the percentage that you can live off? 30%, 70% of your income, right? Of your previous income potentially. How low can you go? Can you live off $200 per week, right? You got to ask yourself, what is your rent? Right? What's food? Right? What's transport? Communication stuff? What are the other essential costs you have in your life, right? Can you lower these costs down as much as you can, right? Because if you can, guess what? This $200 per week, instead of it being, let's say $400 per week, it's now $200 per week, right? Less cost or expenses means less stress and less pressure, right? In uncertain times, you certainly don't want to be stressed out and you don't want high pressure in your life, right? So you want to lower your costs as best as you can, right? So that you can focus on the things that matter most to you today. Is that making sense, guys? Hands up if it's making sense. Good stuff. All right, cool. So next thing here is deal in percentages rather than dollars, right? From my experience, most people screw things up if they consider dollars rather than expenses, purely because we're very, very emotional creatures as humans. And for some unknown reason, or it's probably known, I just haven't read the papers yet, it's called behavioral economics. It's, you know, people get really emotional about money, right? And people typically shoot themselves in the foot. You need to understand that there is a financial story you are telling yourself every single day, right? So what you need to do is audit that financial story. Is it a positive one or a negative one? Because if it's negative, it's going to be very, very difficult to achieve your goals. So what you want to do is surround yourself, listen to the right kinds of individuals, follow people like me, look at people on the social networks, learn from people, go through as many of these webinars as possible, right? Read a ton of books and actually develop your mindset and develop your financial story to an empowering one rather than one of disempowering, right? Very important, because if you're not doing that, it's very difficult to get out of the shell that you brought up in, right? I was brought up in an environment where, you know, there's plenty of love, so don't get me wrong, that was really, really good. But in terms of building wealth, there was close to nothing. Like majority, if not all of my close family always spent what they had, living week to week. So how do you get out of that? You must question what they're talking about if they don't have the results to back it up, right? So you need to find your own way and you need to find your own opinion. And how do you do that? You need to increase your knowledge, you need to get amongst it, you need to read some books, you need to attend webinars, you need to ask a ton of questions. If you've got someone like me ready to answer your questions, make sure you write down as many of those questions as possible, because we're here to help, right? Very, very important. There are plenty of people out there that can help you get out of the rut that you're currently in and put you in a position to actually win, right? So understand that it is about your minimum viable lifestyle. If you can lower that as best as you can and set yourself a challenge, let's go for, you know, living off of 50% of your income. You will see why doing something like this will help you tremendously in the long run, especially as soon as you start working, as soon as you graduate, right? Because I'll be running through some numbers a little bit later to show you what's possible out there for the grads and the people who are working, right? Speed and consistency wins. Right? Very important, right? Speed typically comes from consistency in actions, right? If you're taking actions consistently, if you can automate and not actually think about it, what's going to happen is you're going to create this momentum building process that it becomes a juggernaut for you, and you'll achieve your financial goals. You'll achieve financial freedom, and that's what it's all about, right? That's very, very important, right? FIRE. This is the foundation for FIRE. So I've talked about FIRE a few times. We will go over it. I'm sure some of you do. Are you guys curious what FIRE is? I've said it a few times now. Hands up if you are curious. Good. There's a few of you at least. Awesome. So buffers and runway. Excellent. Thanks for putting your hand up, guys. Very, very important. Look, this is to me, I've never actually done too many of these. I haven't done too many of these webinars. I always get in front of a bunch of people, so I see their faces. So now I don't see any face. So I'm glad that you guys are putting your hand up, because it's good to know that you guys aren't sleeping on the other end of the computer here. So buffers and runways. Right, so this is the power of having a buffer. Obviously, little schematic here, with an income, without an income. If you don't have an income, and if your minimum viable lifestyle is that much, every single week, month, or fortnight, whatever it may be, you're lowering your buffer, right? So the question is, what is your buffer at the moment? Right? Because if you're living week to week, and if you've lost your job, you have to ask yourself, how long have you got, right? How much time do you have with your current savings, and can you get access to some if you run out, right? How do you get access to some? You have to learn how to create an extra income, an extra pillar of income for yourself through selling your time, your skills, helping your parents, helping family members, helping the oldies next door. If they want to go shopping, they can't because they're scared of COVID-19. Maybe you can help them out, right? So these are the things that you can do to increase the income, right? And essentially put yourself in a position so that the dollars that you're tapping into your buffer won't be quite as high. So what you're doing is you're prolonging the time it takes for you to lower your buffer. So let's say you got $5,000 saved, right? Obviously, I'm just throwing numbers out there. And if it costs you $400 per week to survive, you're essentially looking at about 12.5 weeks or so before you run out, right? So if you can lower your cost or your minimum viable lifestyle to, let's say, $250, right? Suddenly you bought yourself a ton more time, right? You bought yourself 7.5 more weeks. This is the power of understanding what your minimum viable lifestyle is, your buffer, to create a runway to ensure that you got enough time to make a pivot, to find that extra income that you need to actually ensure that you can cover this cost instead of having to eat into your savings, right? For some of us who don't have savings to our name, what we need to do is find a way to create an income, right? So we'll be going over that, a few ideas next week, along with investing, to ensure that you understand what you're trying to do and how to sort of kind of build a case for yourself, or build a profile for yourself to actually get some extra income to help you out, right? Because if you've got a buffer, what typically happens is you've got peace of mind, you've got that certainty in your life, right? So obviously the higher the buffer you have, the more certainty you're going to have, especially in uncertain times, right? Because what it ultimately gets you is it buys you time at worst case scenario when you don't have an income, right? Because if the larger this buffer, the more time. Now, some people have a 2 years buffer, some people 3 months, some people 1 month, some people no weeks at all, right? So you got to ask yourself, well, how much buffer do you have? If you've got something, how long will that take you? And if you don't have it, how are you going to build it, right? And this is where minimum viable lifestyle comes in. Having a cash flow management system will be key to build that buffer, to increase peace of mind in the future so that you can start investing and put yourself in a position to win. Any questions on this? Is it all making sense? All basic stuff, is it? Cool. Good stuff. So financial goals. So what we're talking about today is saving more money by understanding the minimum viable lifestyle, right? Because lifestyle creep is real. So what we're trying to do is do something like this. As your paycheck increases, your lifestyle stays the same through your minimum viable lifestyle. Now, if you're not happy with that, guess what? You may have to increase, right? A little bit. But you don't want to be on a 45-degree angle, because 45-degree angle means you're living week to week, right? So what you want to do, the ideal position to be in is to cap your lifestyle for as long as possible, right? Any of you follow this guy called Gary Vee at all? Gary Vee on social media? I'm sure some of you may have heard of him, potentially. Hands up. Yep. A few of you. So what this guy says is what you want to do is hold your breath for as long as possible until so that you can capitalize on the resources available to you. So what you want to do here is cap your lifestyle as best as you can for as long as you can, and then change the lifestyle accordingly, which allows you to invest the difference or put the difference towards the things that matter to you most, which we'll be covering off a little bit later, right? That's what that's all about, right? With financial goals, you need to understand that your income, when saved, creates capital, right? And the end goal is build enough capital to provide you an income. That's the key with finances, right? So what is FIRE? FIRE is financial freedom, financial independence, not financial freedom. Independence, retire early, right? So if you can go on Reddit, there's a bunch of stuff that you can read on this, but it's about understanding that you can retire early and do whatever the hell you want to do by understanding concepts associated with this. Because the actions you take now will help you achieve financial freedom sooner rather than later. So how do you start? What you need to understand is you've got to start with goal setting, right? Start with the end in mind. What you want to do is replace your income, right? So for example, for some of you, what you want to do is get an income first and foremost. But as soon as you get that income, what you want to do is set yourself a goal and to replace that income. So how do you do that? So you need to understand what your minimum viable lifestyle is, right? So that you can understand what surplus you can invest, right? Because that investable surplus becomes your capital, right? If that capital gets you a return on investment year in, year out, what happens is you're getting a return on investment and you're getting extra savings to put towards your capital. So what will happen is if you set yourself a goal, a stretch goal, and a big, hairy, audacious goal or a scary goal, what will happen is you've got three point Bs to aim for, and it'll increase the likelihood of you actually achieving that by getting a return on investment, consistent return on investment, and you're saving towards these particular goals, right? So what you need to understand is that you've got two main variables to consider here: your saving rate and your return on investment as an investor, right? Savings rate is easy because you don't really have to learn that much. You just need to understand your minimum viable lifestyle, right? The return on investment is a little bit harder because you need to learn and need to be au fait with what options you have as an investor, right? So I'll be going through a few numbers to give you an idea of how to replace your income. As per what I mentioned before, you can actually replace a significant amount of your income in 6 to 11 years' time if you're aggressive with your minimum viable lifestyle and if you understand the FIRE kind of movement, right? Speed is key if you want financial freedom in your life, right? Now, if you love what you do, hey, happy days. You can keep loving what you do, keep doing what you're doing, saving as well in the meantime, and building wealth accordingly and have more options for holidays and lifestyle stuff, right? So this is what the game is. You need to understand that it's about replacing an income in the future, yeah? Cool. So what is financial freedom? What you ultimately want to do is set 3 particular income goals, right? Survive, strive, and thrive, right? If this is your capital today, $0, what you want to do is, let's say It's a 5% return of capital to achieve your survive, strive, thrive numbers. If your initial goal is to replace $50,000 of income, you will need $1 million, right? At 5% return on investment, year in year, to produce a 50K income. How do you do that? Consistency is key. So that's $0. How do you do that? You add savings towards an investment plan. You get a return on investment on your investment, and you can actually build a compounding wealth curve. Most people, unfortunately, are sitting on this, living week to week, and this is their superannuation, right? What we want to do is save. The big one is save, and then these arrows here is basically getting a return on investment, being strategic in your approach, lowering taxes, and ensuring that you're consistent with the way you're doing things, right? So these are the things. So what typically happens is, if you can be strategic, what will happen is you'll save years, right, to get there. Most people are on a 40 or 50 year timeline. So what I'm showing you today is, by having a minimum viable lifestyle, by saving a lot, by putting it to work, right, by investing it strategically, what you can do is get consistent with this and allow yourself to build the momentum, right, moving forward. That's the gig, because as you build momentum, you're literally saving years of your life. And if your first goal is $50,000, if you get there 10 years earlier, you essentially pocketed $500,000 worth of income. This is the power of understanding what your minimum viable lifestyle is, creating a point of reference, and not spending your money week to week, not buying crap with it. Because if you can siphon a percentage off a little bit later every single week as you progress, what will happen is it'll increase the likelihood of you kicking some butt and actually replacing your incomes, right? Or part of your income at the very least. Is it all making sense? Any questions on this? Feel free to put it in the Q&A section if you've got any questions, if it's not too clear at all. Is it all making sense? Hands up if it's making sense, guys. Awesome. Good stuff. Okay, so is budgeting for you, right? So as part of minimum viable lifestyle, you need to understand what budgeting is all about. Now, for me, I don't particularly like budgeting, right? So today I'm going to be showing you. Now you're not really going to hear that too much from financial advisors, because it's good to budget. But the way I see it is that it's very negative, because what typically happens is your income comes in, right? First thing goes to your fixed expenses, second your variable expenses, third savings, right? And what typically happens is it creates three scenarios. The back to zeros, which was me, right? I've been guilty of this, where I save up for something and I spend the whole lot and go back to zero. Or nest egg builders. I've never been a nest egg builder, because I've always invested and I've always been a back to zero guy. But some people are really, really good at saving. But what happens is, because they're so good at saving, they get freaked out about spending on anything. So all they do is save, 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 scrounge, and then they protect their savings like it's, like it's the most important thing in the world. And they essentially become this nest egg builder, and they don't do much with it, right? And then there's a too hard basket, where you do this multiple times over and it's just too hard. You put your hands up and go, oh, bloody hell, it's too hard. I'll just earn my keep and live week to week and let the government help me out, right? So these are the main things that I see, main scenarios that I see as an advisor with people, right? So what I like to do is reverse engineer the ideal outcome, which is essentially understanding what you value most in life is, right? So for some people, right, they want a holiday every year, right? So tick. So if you write down all of the things that you want a home, you want investments, you obviously want a buffer for a runway as per the minimum viable lifestyle that I was talking about earlier, right? So what are the lifestyle options you want in your life, and add it to that? So what you're going to do this time is that as soon as money comes into your bank account, it automatically goes towards different bank accounts, right? In this case, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bank accounts, because this hypothetical person has got 12 things that they value in their life. So what is it for you? So you ask yourself, what are the things that you should be doing, right? What do you want to see in your life, right? What do you want to do consistently? And you start siphoning money away. And what you can do is you go to another bank or to your existing bank and open up these accounts. Now the key is these accounts have to be zero fee. You don't want to be paying fees on this stuff, right? So first and foremost, your money goes towards what you value most. And then secondly, you live within your means with your minimum viable lifestyle. And that's what you live off, right? So the rest ticks off all of your financial and lifestyle goals to ensure that your values are met, and therefore it's okay to make a sacrifice. Now the key, the thing that you really need to understand with this is that you have to start with a percentage of your income, right? So how low can you go, right? How much can you save to put towards it, right? Speed and consistency wins. As per what Tim Ferriss says, a decent method you follow is better than the perfect method you quit. Very important. Will you show us how to invest our savings? Yes, I'll be showing you a few options next week. Today is about cash flow. Today is about ensuring that you get a solid foundation, solid habits, so that you can start investing into the future. Okay? Another question here. I'm an international dental student at Griffith. I do not have an income at the moment, but I do have access to a large amount of low interest only payment line of credit. Is there any point in trying to invest some of that over the next 2 to 3 years, I'm assuming, before I need it for the final 2 years of my program? I do need this money to cover tuition accounts in 3 years' time. Is it worth the risk? Look, with that one, it's a tough one, because you have to understand what the market is, right? And what risk are you willing to take? So the question is, are you happy to lose some funds in the short to medium term? If you're going to need it in 2 years' time, the market may drop again. Therefore, I'd be staying out of the market if I were you, right? I'd be waiting for the bottom of the market and then potentially looking at my options. But I'd be investing in a conservative manner, because knowing that you're going to need to pull those funds out, right? So what I'll get you to do, that person, I'm not going to mention your name, is follow me on Instagram, and we can take this conversation offline, and I can make a few videos to kind of educate you around your options with that one. Okay, cool. Okay, so how do you build this, right? This structure. So what you want to do is have a bank account, right? Understand, write down all of the things that you want in your life, whether it be 5, 6, or 8, or 12 things, right? From that bank, ask them to create 5, 6, or 12, or 8 other bank accounts that's zero fees. And as soon as money comes in, you know if you're getting paid fortnightly or monthly or weekly, whatever it may be, as soon as money comes in, what you want to do is make an automated payment towards these particular accounts, right? And what you do is you work out the percentage of what you're wanting to put away first, and then live within your means with the rest, right? So what I'll be doing is I'll be sending Cam from the GUGC Student Guild an Excel spreadsheet that you guys can play around with, so that you can actually create your own little cash flow management tool and cash flow management system, so that you can go ahead and implement this thing, so that you can automate it week to week, so that you can use time as your ally to move forward with confidence. Yeah, does that make sense? Cool. So feel free to fire the GUGC an email about this. I'll be sending them an email with the attachment as soon as I get off this webinar. Right. Next question. Do you have any recommendations on how you would work out automated payments when your income is variable? Yes. So what I would be doing is creating that buffer first and foremost. Like if you've got a variable income, what you need to do is create a buffer for yourself, so that the variable income, let's say your income looks a little bit like this. So what you need to do is you create a buffer let's say 2 times worth of income, right? And then to normalize, you get the average of your income, right? From the highs and the lows, and then you use your buffer, and then you slowly siphon money out of that on average, right? But if you get too much of a low, you may need to stop it, right? So it depends on how variable and how constant, whenever you get paid. Now, if you're getting paid every 2 or 3 months, you've got a bit of an issue with automating this thing consistently. But the key is to build a buffer first and foremost if you've got a variable income. Does that answer your question? Cool. Okay, good. Okay, FIRE, speed and the timeline. So speed is determined by return on investment and savings per annum, right? So what I've done is I've actually done 3 projections on a return on investment of 5%, 7.5%, and 10%. And savings per annum, basically from 10% all the way up to 60%, right? So I'll show you exactly how to replace your income by playing around with these numbers. And you, as a future employee or a current employee, have a decision to make on what numbers you want to aim for to begin with, right? So how do you start? You have to choose a baseline. So by understanding what your minimum viable lifestyle is, it allows you to know that you can save X amount per year, year in, year out, with rain, hail, or shine, right? So that you can bank on, or you can focus on the return on investment, producing your 5% return on investment, a 7.5%, or a 10% return on investment. So next week, if you come along to the seminar, I'll be showing you kind of ways in which to get a return on investment for your current capital, right? Cool, so FIRE timelines. This is the 5% one. So this is quite a busy one. So the idea here is, if we're trying to replace that income, right? If this is the income here, and this is dollars and this is time, right? So what we're trying to work out is how much time will it take to replace an income if you're getting a 5% return and you're currently saving 10% per annum, right? To replace your income and to replace your full income, it will take you 50 years if you're saving 10% of your income, right? If we go down the other side, if you want to replace your whole income and get a 5% return on investment year in, year out on your capital, it'll take you 20 years to replace your income, right? Now, you need to ask yourself, is that fast enough? Oh, sorry, if you're saving 60%. So you need to ask yourself, is that fast enough? Right? Because how do you speed it up? If you're already saving 60%, guess what? The only lever you can pull is the return on investment lever. Therefore, you've got to ask yourself, how can you get a higher investment return? This is the beautiful question. If I can get you to take one thing away from this particular seminar, is consistently ask yourself how. How do you get a better result with every single aspect of your life? And you'll be in a much, much better situation than the majority of the people out there, because they don't even know to ask a question in the first place, right? You want to put yourself in a position where you're constantly asking, well, how do I make it better, right? So these are the levers. So tell me, out of you guys, hands up for some of you who think you can save at least 30% of your income once you start working. Hands up. Awesome. Good stuff. How about people who can save 40 to 50%, understanding that they've got a minimum viable lifestyle in place because you're currently uni students, and if you can lock in this particular lifestyle for as long as possible and hold your breath, that 50% thing right here you can be financially free within 15 to 23 years, right? Who can do that, you think? Awesome. Good stuff. So let me show you how it would look if we up the return on investment by 2.5%. Similar thing, we've got 7.5% return on investment year in, year out here, right? It'll take you 34 years, from 50 years to 34 years, right? just by increasing from 5% return on investment to 7.5%, right? Basic maths, but it saved that hypothetical person, right, 16 years. That's a huge amount of savings. What if they increased their savings to 60%? They can literally get there in 14 years, right? Crazy. If they were happy to live on the minimum viable lifestyle, they can get there in 8 years. That's the power of this thing, right? I've got a few questions. Let me answer these. Okay, do you have any recommendation? We already answered that. I'm sorry, but where does the return on investment come from? Okay, so the return on investment is basically the dollars that you've saved on a year-to-year basis, right? So as soon as you find your minimum viable lifestyle and your income is up here, you subtract your minimum viable lifestyle. In an ideal world, you have a surplus. Surplus being extra cash, right? So what you do with that extra cash is you gotta handle your lifestyle goals, and then you gotta handle your investment goals, your financial goals. So this here is a savings to invest. If you can manage to save 10 to 60% of your current income or of your future income, let's say, it'll take you these number of years to replace your minimum viable lifestyle income, or next step up, 100% of your salary at the same return on investment, right? The next one is basically 100% of your salary at 5% return on investment. So what you've done is you've lowered your aggressiveness towards investing, right? You've rejigged your portfolio. Instead of going for riskier asset classes that may drop in value and go up and down, right, similar to the share market and the like, what you can be doing is investing in the fixed income component, right? So if you're curious about where you can invest, type in fixed income managed funds, right? Type in government bonds, right? These are the options that you have, right? Lower risk investments than the share market. It doesn't go up and down like this. It sort of plods along and it spits out a return on investment that's much lower than what the stock market typically does, right? So that's the story here. Is that making sense? Hands up if that's making sense, guys. Cool, and if you've got any questions, make sure you fire them at me, yeah? Awesome. Okay, so the last one is a 10% return on investment, right? So what we've done here is same deal, 10 to 60% of savings, but the power of this thing is if you're looking to replace your minimum viable lifestyle, and if you can manage to be an investor that averages 10% per annum, right? What you're basically banking on is being able to replace your minimum viable lifestyle, right? At a 6-year time frame. If you want to replace your whole salary, 11-year time frame. That's obviously at 60%. Not everyone can do that. So if you go with 20% of your income to be invested, right? If you're looking at 17 years for your minimum viable lifestyle, just under 20 years to replace 100% of your salary. Right? If you go smack bang in the middle, you're looking at 10 years to replace your minimum viable lifestyle, and 13 years to replace 100% of your salary. This is the power of saving. Because if you're a person that has started from zero, right, the more you save, the higher the likelihood of achieving success, right? Someone who's lucky enough to have parents to sort of provide them with some lump sum cash to help them out, right? They don't have to save as much because they can build enough momentum and essentially make their money work harder for them, right? So everyone's at a different stage, and the key to this thing is understanding your thing and forgetting about what everyone else is doing, right? Who gives a crap about what anyone else is doing? because you ultimately want to put yourself in the best position to win. So these are the numbers. What kind of return on investment can you get, and how much savings can you actually put away? These are the two raw numbers that you need to kind of push forward with to ensure that you actually achieve something significant in your life within a short period of time. And what underpins this whole strategy is understanding your minimum viable lifestyle. If you're not understanding this, and if you're not using that to your advantage, your surplus will be a deficit. Right? Deficit being you're running at a loss. You're getting into debt. Right? You do not want to get to a stage where you're consistently spending more than what you earn. That's the worst financial position to be in. Fire recap. Any questions on that? Is that all making sense? Hands up. Maximum I've had so far was about 50-60%. Come on, everyone, hands up if we can. Cool. All right, good stuff. So what we're trying to do is hit the ideal income. So what's the ideal income for you? Everyone's different, right? So what's the amount that you're trying to achieve as an investor? Is it 50,000, 100,000, 200,000? Everyone's different. Everyone's got different ambitions, right? And then you got to come up with a way to speed up that process, because most people will be on a trajectory of never actually hitting that ideal income because they'd be dead by the time they get there, right? So by saving more, by investing better, you actually achieve it. That's the game that we're playing, right? So bringing it all together. So what you need to do is understand the power of the minimum viable lifestyle, right? If you can set yourself a goal of saving 20 to 50% of your income for the rest of your life, you will literally get there in a decade or two's time, right? And if you can invest strategically or just consistently, you will put yourself in the best position to actually win, right? Understand what the low-hanging fruits are, right? For you guys, the low-hanging fruit is build the habits you need to achieve your goals. This is the unlock, ladies and gents. If you can unlock those habits and ensure you're gonna put yourself, you basically put yourself to win, in a position to win, right? And you constantly build on those good habits year in, year out. Lock it in, lock it in, lock it in, lock it in. And you don't want to get rid of all of the bad financial habits. Get rid of the negative financial stories, right? So we understand what the buffers work, how they work. Obviously, the more capital you have, the more longer runway in terms of a timeline you have, right? The FIRE principle, financial independence, retire early. We know what that is all about. Understanding what cash flow management is, it's key. So the key with this thing is you automate. So you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it, right? If you can automate and put a percentage away on a month-to-month or fortnight-to-fortnight, whenever you get paid basis, what will happen is you don't have to think about it. You live within your means, within your minimum viable lifestyle, and in 5 years' time, suddenly you've got a ton more options than what your peers would have done who have been living week to week. And yes, you would have made a few sacrifices, but 5 years goes really, really quickly. I bet all of you can, if you look back 5 years ago and know exactly where you were and go, holy crap, that's gone quickly, right? It's really, really straightforward, guys. You just need to be able to make that small sacrifice. And I'm not saying start with 50. If you can start with 10 to begin with, and then move yourself up to 20 and challenge yourself for more and more and more each month, right? You'll put yourself in a position to win. Very important. All right, so future webinars, we'll be talking about improving cash flow and investing. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about your options in investing, I'll be covering that off next week. Navigating bureaucracy. And if you've got other things that you'd like me to cover off on, please feel free to provide some feedback. Right? So we'll be asking for some feedback post this webinar to ensure that we're providing you guys with as best a webinar as possible, so that we bombard you with a bunch of valuable information that you can take away and implement accordingly, right? When all else fails, get debt is going to be the last one. How do we structure your finances accordingly so you can actually successfully get debt from your parents, family, friends, banks, right? So for you guys, was that helpful? Do you have any questions? Is it all making sense for you guys? Is it helpful? Hands up if it was helpful. Awesome. Good to see. Good stuff. Okay, so is it possible that ROI is constantly at 7.5? Absolutely, it's possible. Yes, yes. Because some years you're going to have 15% return on investment. Other years you're going to have 2. So it sort of balances out sometimes. Some years you're going to have a drop, right? As per what happened this year with COVID-19. But if you've had some good years in the past, it creates a buffer for the downturn, right? That's why diversification is important, understanding what your options are as an investor and not going for the home runs each and every time, because if you're a home run hitter, you're bound to get struck out sooner rather than later, and you don't want to be struck out multiple times in your investment career, right? So would you suggest we put savings in term deposits? Look, it depends. Like it's a really hard question to answer because I don't know what your situation is. I think the good thing about the term deposit is it's higher than a typical savings account. But the question is, how much higher are you getting, right, relative to liquidity, having access to your cash straight away, right? That's the question. Because if it's only 0.5% higher, and if you've got $10,000, it's probably not worth it. Now, if you've got a few $100,000, and if you want to look at 6 months or 1 year, you got to ask yourself, well, how much can you live on at the moment? And maybe you can siphon off a small amount. But I'm not a big fan of term deposits. There are other investments out there which we can go over in the next seminar to allow you guys to invest a little bit better. What are your thoughts on RUNWAYS and Spaceship apps as beginner investor? Awesome. Yeah, they're great. That allows you to invest straight away, right? You can slowly siphon money in there. You can build your portfolio slowly, without taking on ridiculous amounts of risk, or take on ridiculous amounts of risk because it's a small amount of money. The key thing is to leave it in a particular strategy for at least a few years to make it work for you, right? And the key thing with investing is you build a buffer first, and then off the back of the buffer, start investing with the extra cash that you build so that you can work towards your financial independence, right? Very important. Cool. Are these apps strategic? Will I lose money? Look, if you invested 2 months ago, you absolutely would have lost money. But right now, will you lose money? Potentially, right? Maybe it's the best thing to do is kind of hold out for a few months. I know I am. I'm holding out for another few weeks at the very least, right? So I'm not giving you advice here, but I'm just telling you what I'm looking to do, right? So in terms of losing money, money goes up and down. Understand that Spaceship and RUNWAYS, they're all there to hopefully build portfolios. Therefore, they're going to be investing as best as they can to support their customers, right? They're there to build portfolios for society at large. Therefore, it's not in their best interest to take ridiculous amounts of risk and lose money for their investors, right? Very important. So I've got a few giveaways on my Instagram. If you wanna get a few of those, feel free to follow me there. Click on the link on the bio. This is my contact details. Feel free to link up with me. Any other questions before we finish up, guys? Thank you. Thanks for your really generous comment there. Look, I'm happy to help. We're here to take feedback as well. If you've got any feedback for us, we're trying to make this as practical as possible for you all so that you can walk away from these webinars forearmed, forewarned, and happy to sort of smash it out of the ballpark, right? Very important that you guys get a ton of value out of this thing because we really want to put you in the best position to win, right? Any other questions before we wrap things up, guys? I'll happily sit here and answer all of them. It's right on 3 now, so we're on time to finish up, but I'll happily answer any questions that you may have. All good? All right, ladies and gents, well, thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to seeing all of you and hopefully some of your friends as well. So feel free to invite some of your friends along for next week. Look, it's all about adding value, right? So if you've got any specific questions, make sure you fire them at me. during Q&A. If you want to take this conversation offline, hit me up on Instagram. Happy to help, guys. We're here to provide as much value as possible. So, just see us as a resource. Obviously, the Student Representative Council and the Student Guild of Griffith University values you guys, and that's why I'm here. I'm an alum, and I'm happy to sort of provide as much information as possible so that you guys can stress less about your finances and put yourself in a position to win. All right, that's me. Thank you very much. See you soon. One last hand up before I go, guys. A little hand up there. Just show me some love. Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll chat soon. See you next week.